Hello, students. Welcome to EC 100. So we are going to be having a recording of the lectures that we are going to cover. I think this will be very helpful for most of you who probably might want to go at your pace, because I know we have a few challenges. Sometimes you might not really follow the concepts in class, where I try to cover everything, but also you might not have enough time. As you have seen on our coverage, that we have quite a number of topics, but also I know some of you are carrying over this course, so you might not be able to probably cover every lecture. So this might be helpful, but I'm not encouraging absence in class. As you know, 20% absenteeism will make you to be expelled. So you don't want to be in that group. So this is just in addition to make your learning easier. So we're going to be having this, but also you have the textbooks that I've shared with you. So whenever I assign you to read the notes in addition to the lectures, and then we have more time during class to kind of get into the difficult concepts or attempt to discuss more, maybe even solve some of the questions that might need a bit of work during the lecture. So this will give us more time in terms of coverage, but also help you to kind of progress given your pace. And you can even go back to revise maybe somewhere where you did not really understand. So I hope you find this useful. But again, don't just rely on this. You will need to be broad in terms of really understanding, search for more meaning from other sources as well. So let's get started. My name is Felicia Masaki. You can call me Madam, obviously, but that's my name. So I shared with you the course coverage. So we have, this course is divided, it's economics, principles of economics, but it's divided into two parts, where one part is microeconomics and then the other part is macroeconomics. So in each of these parts, we'll have a number of topics, okay? So for the first lecture, this is just an introduction into concepts of economics. So we're going to cover on that, which is the first chapter, and then we are going to look into now the chapters within microeconomics. So that is the second chapter. So let's get started, okay? So beginning with just a definition of what economics is. So maybe you have never studied economics before. I would like to encourage you, no matter whether you're a first learner into economics or you did economics before, how I am going to teach you, but even the materials that I'm going to use and how I'm going to break down the concepts, I'm going to make it very easy for whoever that is just beginning to get to know about economics. So please, first of all, I would want for you to break that mindset, the mindset that I'm not going to make it, or maybe it's too difficult for me because I never studied before. So as long as you're using English as a medium of instruction and that you are conversant with English, then you should be able to comprehend all that I'm going to teach you, because I'm going to teach you from that point of view where you probably know nothing about economics. So relax, just follow through carefully, have your notebook, exercise book, your notes, whatever that, where you can you can write down your notes and follow through, your pen, and then let's go down with this, explanations. So what is economics? Okay, so probably you hear about it every day. We speak about it, uchumi umepanda, uchumi umepungua, we compare, or we talk about different countries in the newspapers. People discuss about, sometimes, or a lot of times, I would say, they relate economics with prices and things like that, or with the standard of living. Okay, so all that is correct. Okay, but what is it really when we talk about economics? So economics is a study of choice under conditions of scarcity. That's the basic definition. That is what makes economists deal with economics so that they can explain to anybody. It's from this simple concept that you, as an individual, you have many choices, but then you are limited by the level of scarcity. Okay, so how are you going to make decisions? All right. Okay, that's the simple as it is. So one big problem that gave birth to economics is scarcity. Okay, we can't have anything or everything we want. So scarcity is the main problem. Okay, what is scarcity? Scarcity is shortage, limitation, insufficiency, all that. Okay, so what do we look at? What units kind of express or demonstrate that shortage? So it could be shortage of time, shortage of power, or money. Let's say you want something right now. Okay, you want, you want to buy. Let's say you want to buy clothes, you want to buy food, but then what you have in your pocket or in your wallet is not enough to get you the food that you desire. Okay. So probably you might lower your choices and think of something cheaper. Okay. So let's say if you want to buy a burger for that would be 12,000 Tanzanian shillings, but you only have 4,000. So you might think, okay, let me go to cafeteria and just buy rice and beans. Okay. So scarcity has limited your choices. Okay. So it could be in terms of money, you don't have enough money, but sometimes you don't have enough influence, you don't have enough power. Okay. You might have money, you might have the time, but you don't have power. Okay, so that power sometimes can be in form of purchasing power or just power like market power, So let's say if there are different producers in the market, okay, um, like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, more. Think of these big brands, right? So if there is anything that affects price, you see, if you're a smaller producer, and you want to change price, you might not have influence on that change because you don't have the power as how Coca-Cola has, as how Pepsi has. Okay. And maybe more Azam, something like that. Okay. So you might want to change, but you're not able to because you don't have that power. So that is for producers, the same way for consumers. Have you ever gone to, how banks treat customers, right? So when a certain customer, if you're just a normal customer, you might be treated just normally. But you'll see there are certain customers who have probably a lot of money in the banks, or they deal with large sum of transactions with the bank. So whenever they enter in the bank, they even have a special place. They don't wait in line. They're treated differently. They even maybe given a meal or coffee while they're waiting. So that's because of their power, their influence, because of the amount of money or amount of transactions that they have. So always we are limited. You want to do something, you want to have a lot of things, you want to accumulate wealth, you want to have commodities, you want to have whatever you want, but you're limited, okay, by power, time, money, and anything that you can think. It could be, you have only 2 hours to attend this lecture right now. You only have 2 hours. This is probably going to be 2 hours long. So in these 2 hours, you wish you could be doing something else. Okay, maybe you could be sleeping, maybe you could be watching a movie, but you cannot do all those things that you desire to do. You would have to only choose one thing that would fix in that 2 hours time. Okay, maybe you want to visit somebody. So if they're too far, you might not be able to visit because time will not allow you. So I hope this really gets you to understand, because this is the core of so many economic problems that we are having today, whether it's poverty, whether it's corruption, whether it's any issue that is related to economics. Trade, why do people trade? That means, exchange, and all things. Why do you go to the market? Every concept, economic concept, it is sourced from this concept. Okay, so out of the problem of scarcity, people are forced now to make choices, okay, on what you really need, what you really want, what you really desire, based on what is there, what is available. Okay, so from that concept is where we get to have this term called the opportunity cost. Okay, opportunity cost simply is that for any choice that you make, because there is a problem of scarcity, you're being limited. That means every choice now you finally make, it comes at a cost of you giving up another thing. Okay, you can't have everything. You can't have everything because you're limited. So there has to be a cost for you to have the most important thing, or the most available thing that you really need. It comes at a cost of you sacrificing something else. Okay, so that is what is called the opportunity cost. Okay, what are you sacrificing? What are you giving up to have what you're having, or what you want to have? So it could be the money you're paying. It could be the time that you're giving up. You could be doing something else. So all that is, in economics, is called opportunity cost. All right, so this is a very important term that you need to grasp it. You need to get into the text, read it, and understand it, because you're going to be reading and talking about opportunity cost over and over throughout this course. Okay, so here is an example of an opportunity cost. If you didn't choose to come to university to pursue a degree program, and this example is also in the textbook as well, okay, what would you be doing with your life in the same 4 years? All right, so that is a very important question to ask yourself. If you didn't I need to record the time so that I can just catch up with it and stop. Should be 2 hours long. Okay, so opportunity costs. Yeah, so think about that scenario. Okay, you have 4 years. You're doing your BE course. It's going to take you 4 years, but then from when you finished your high school, you could be eligible to go work in an office, in some sector, and get a good salary. I can't say, a suitable one, but you could get some salary, and start from there, right? So there are different paths for different people. So what if you took that path, okay, of taking a job and not going to school? So what would be the opportunity cost? Okay, so whenever we think about opportunity costs, it's the inclusion of two costs, and we're going to see them. Okay, so one type of cost is called explicit cost. All right, this is the money that you sacrifice by actually paying out directly. Okay, simple way is that if you are thirsty, you're thirsty right now. You're very, very thirsty. It's dry, hot sun, and you're thirsty. You want a drink that will quench your thirst. But then you're thinking, should I get an ice cream? Should I buy water? Or should I buy cold Coke or Pepsi? Whatever, okay, choice that you want. So if you go to the shop, you have 1,000, and 1,000 can buy any of those. But your most best choice is called Coke. So when you pay money to get Coke, okay, that money, you could keep that money and buy ice cream, you could buy lunch, you could buy airtime, but you have sacrificed all those other desires and pay to get the Coke. Okay, so you paying money directly, that is the cost of you choosing to have that Coke. Okay, so that is an explicit cost. It's an opportunity cost, but is an explicit cost because you are sacrificing money by directly paying to get that choice, which is your cock. Okay? Now, implicit cost is the value of something sacrificed when no direct payment is made. Okay? No direct payment is made. So this is whereby there is no exchange of money, but then if it, instead of me doing this choice, I could be doing something else. There is no money value, but let me now take it that way. So if you're able to find the money value, then you can add to it, but it's still going to be an implicit cost. Okay, so you have not paid directly, but you know that there is value to it. We'll see that later. Okay, so this the explicit cost of a choice may only be a part and sometimes a small part of opportunity cost. So whenever we talk about opportunity cost, we have to consider both the money you're paying directly to get that choice, or as well as the implicit cost, the value of what you have sacrificed. Okay. So for instance here, by you pursuing a degree program, you're going to pay a school fee, right? Your tuition fee, your accommodation, you're going to pay for a lot of things to be in school, right? But not everything is explicit cost. So you have to find what are you directly paying as a sacrifice that you could not otherwise have incurred it if it was not for that expense or for that choice. So an example would be a tuition fee. So implicit cost is now the value. If I did not go to university, what would I be doing? That means your years that you would be spending working in an office, working in a factory, working maybe in your parents' farm. Okay, so if you can find the value of that time and what you could get from those 4 years in the farm, that is what is called implicit cost. So when we are finding opportunity cost, we want to know the total of what you're paying as your tuition fee. Okay, that is what you're paying to choose to be in school. You're sacrificing your tuition fee. You know, your parents could use that money, your tuition fee, they could use it to do something else, to invest, to do anything, but you're sacrificing that you can stay in school. So that is explicit cost. And then you have to plus the implicit cost, the value of your time. If you had spent your 4 years in the farm, if you would spend your 4 years at the office and get some salary, or just, maybe just have fun, whatever, if you can find that value of that time, then we add together. That is the cost of you choosing to pursue your 4-year education. I hope that makes clear. Okay. So this is an example that we can probably try to attempt from what I just said. Okay. I would like for you to do this. So we want to find the opportunity cost of you attending university. So when we say the cost of attending university in economics, if you ask the question, what is the cost of attending university? What we're implying here is the opportunity cost, which will prompt you to consider the explicit cost and implicit cost. Okay, so here is an example. You come to RD University. These are the expenses, okay, for 1 year. And then this is the total amount for the 4 years that you will spend. So your main cost is your tuition fee, okay, which is 3 million. And then books and stationaries, 1 million. Accommodation, you will need that 2 million for the year. Transportation, meals, clothing, and other. It's just an example, by the way, okay? So don't quote me wrong and say like, oh, this can't be. This is just an example. Transportation, meals. So this is all other costs that, you would incur. So maybe your pocket money, whatever, meals, all that. So your upkeep, it's 1.5 million, okay? So then total incurred as fee, So this, okay, when we say total incurred as fees, like what you would have, if your parent asks you what is going to cost you for the whole year, give me a budget, this is something you would share, right? Okay, so now here are the questions that I want you to attempt, okay? How much will your parents, we assume that you get money from your parents, but some of you, I know you are sponsored by the loans board. So how much will your parents pay for your total education? Okay, so what do you think that would be? Then what is the opportunity cost of attending university? And then what is the explicit cost? What is the implicit cost? So just to help you, before you get to the opportunity cost, you first need to consider your explicit cost and then your implicit cost. Okay, so what your parents will pay for your total education, okay, what do you think that will be? What will that be? Okay, so here is something that I want you to maybe just give you a hint. I'm thinking whether I should solve this with you or let you, but this example is in the textbook. Okay, so I would advise, because I will definitely test you on this. Okay, so I would advise you to go and do that. Okay, and do that. But so let me just give you a few hints that will kind of help you. So the tuition fee, this is the amount that you directly pay, okay, to the university. And then there's books and stationery. You'll definitely need to pay this. But then when it comes to accommodation, your boarding, you will need a place to stay even if you are not in university, right? So it's not something that you're actually sacrificing. There is no really sacrifice. Whether you would be at home, not attending university, whether you will work in an office, whether you will be working in a farm, you will need accommodation, right? So this is a cost that you would still incur anywhere else. So you're not sacrificing this for anything. The same as transportation, meals, clothing, and all these things. Your upkeep, you need money for your upkeep. Okay, so you are going to incur this, whether you're living at home or you are going to farming or you are working in a factory or working in an office. You will need to move. You will need to dress up. You will need your upkeep. You will need meals. You need to eat, right? So these two costs here are not going to be sacrificed for anything because you will incur them anywhere. Okay, so whenever we talk about opportunity cost, when we talk about explicit cost, we don't include this because they are just going to be incurred anyways. So what we are going to be considering as direct pay is going to be your tuition fee and your books and stationaries. Okay. All right, I think I've already answered for you your explicit cost. So what is your implicit cost? So implicit cost is what you would be earning elsewhere, or the value of time spent elsewhere if you're not going to university. Okay, so because I think from this example, so let me just add you some details that this can help you. Okay, I'm going to add you some very important detail to help you calculate the implicit cost. So here, suppose you get a job, okay? Get a job at, let's say, XYZ office at 300 T shillings salary per month. Okay. So all right. So I think that should be helpful to guide you to calculate the implicit cost. So suppose you could get a job at, so if you're not in university, you would probably, we assume that you could get a job where you could earn 300,000 shillings as your salary, as your earning, okay, per month. All right. So you're going to use this to calculate your implicit cost. And then at the end of the day, you have to find now your opportunity cost. So please check on the textbook. So it will help you greatly. Of course, they're using dollars, they're using other figures, but you will get the idea. So I want you to get these answers correctly. What are you going to pay directly? What are you going to pay as your opportunity cost? Okay. So let's move on. I hope this will really be helpful to help you understand about opportunity cost. And there's some few more examples there where they give you different scenarios where you pay money directly and where you incur implicit costs. So the next part in economics or introduction to economics is this term resources. You will hear a lot about resources. We're going to talk about resources, but we need to have some uniformity here. What do we refer to when we talk about resources? So these are the basic elements that we use to make goods and services, okay? So what are they? Okay, we talk about scarcity. Scarcity of what? Is scarcity of resources, right? So what are these resources? Resources is anything you use to produce goods and services, all right? But what are these things that you're using to produce goods and services? So we divide them into four main resources or main categories, four main categories. So one of them is labor, okay? So by labor, you calculate it by using time. So the time that human beings spend in producing goods and services. So in goods production, goods and services, all right, you can use people, human beings, to produce those goods and services. I'm not saying you must, but you can as one of the resources, all right? You see in industries, in the banks is a service sector, okay? So for service sector to work, you need people, human beings. You have tellers, you have a bank manager, you have a lot of people who work together to, so in any industry, you'll find people are working. They're spending time to produce services and goods. Then other resources, capital. Capital is a long-lasting tool that is used to produce other goods. So you need one good to produce other goods, okay? So this is divided into two. Actually, there's physical capital and then there is human capital, okay? So the part of the capital stock consists of physical goods. When you're using goods to produce other goods, like physical goods, then that is physical capital. So this could be machinery, where you're having machines like a computer, like in factories, all that is physical capital. Human capital, on the other hand, is where now we're using the human strength, human capability to produce goods and services, their intelligence, their skills, their experience, their training, and all that to produce goods and services, okay? Then capital stock is where the total amount of capital in a nation that is productively useful at a particular point of time. So there's a difference between capital stock and capital flow. You might need to look them up, but basically, when you get to a country, let's say like Tanzania, and you want to know what is the capital stock of Tanzania, that means you need to find all the total amount of capital that is present, okay, that is used to produce other goods in the country, okay, at that point in time. The other resource is land. So this is the physical space on which production takes place, okay? It's most known as the natural resource, immovable resource. So, a lot of things happening on the land, like construction is happening on the land. You need land to construct agriculture, production. So those are the goods and services that are produced from the land as a resource, okay? And you will see that when you talk about scarcity of resources, you will see that a lot of issues arise where a country has scarcity of land, you see? So you'll find that every country, every nation has different challenges of scarcity as far as these resources are concerned. So there are countries where, let's say, they have fewer laborers, okay, and more machines, okay, machines or capital goods, okay. So you find that they will have different challenges, okay. And then those countries also with maybe less capital goods and more of laborers will have certain advantages as well as certain challenges. So it's an interesting way, and that's what now give rise to people coming together and trade exchange, okay? So the last resource is entrepreneurship, the ability and willingness to combine the other resources, labor, capital, and land into productive enterprises. Okay, so this is all about entrepreneurship. It's like a common term nowadays, basically, but this is all about how a person is able to put together different resources and producing goods with the intention of maximizing profit. Okay, that's a very important aspect there. So whenever we think about production, all right, we should think it's a process. It's a process of combining resources in the process of, producing, and then you produce outcomes, which are the outputs or goods and services. So your resources, we have talked about them: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. And then you can have other inputs to mix your, inputs can be any other thing that is added. It can be part of your resources, or it can be produced from resources that you will consider adding in your production process to produce goods and services. So those are the examples of inputs. There are inputs like electricity. So if you think about electricity comes from resources like natural resources. You need water to produce electricity. You need machines. So it comes from the resources that we already have. But then it produces another form, which again you combine with a factory. If you're producing you're producing clothes, Kiwanda, I'm thinking of Kiwanda Changuo. So if you're producing clothes factory, you will need electricity as your input. But remember, electricity was produced from the resources, if that makes sense. So how are you combining your resources and your inputs to produce goods and services? All that is what happens in production. Okay, so goods and services can take a variety: perishable goods, durable goods, services, any that you can think of, small scale, large scale. All that is what we call goods and services, or in other parts, we'll be talking about them as outputs, is what you produce. So what is microeconomics? Here is where we differentiate these two key parts of the subject of economics. So microeconomics, these words, micro means small, okay? They originate from Greek. So micros and macros. So micro is small, okay? And then macro is large. Just as simple as that. So whenever we talk about microeconomics, we study the economics by using smaller, I would say smaller measures, okay? Smaller aspects, smaller measures. So like individual aspects. So you're studying the entire economics by just looking at the behavior of households, behavior of business people, behavior of one product, okay? So you want to study just one product in the entire economy, one product in one village, or just, so you are using smaller smaller indicators, smaller variables to study the whole economy, okay, from any angle. So this is what microeconomics is about, okay? And the individual actors in this part are households, business firms, okay, or companies or producers, all right, firm owners, all that. And then governments, okay? So here we study choices, how each of these individual category make choices and how they interact with each other when they meet in the marketplace, you know, for exchanging of some goods and services. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, now is the aggregation. So you now combine every small or individual actor in the economy, and now you study them as a whole big unit. Okay, so here you move away from studying one product, fewer products. You look at the whole volume of what is being produced or what is being consumed. Okay, here you look at everything, like consumption of the whole thing, the whole economy. Okay, so as it says, the overall view of the entire economy. Okay, so that's it. So when we talk about economics now, how do you discuss, present some of the concepts, or maybe how do you get to understand how different concepts are being explained? So these are two statements, we say, that are used to kind of describe the economy. So there's one which is called normative, and the other one is positive. Okay, so positive economics simply explains how the economy works. Okay, the way it is. But then it's like one just comes in and just says, this is the way it is. Okay. For instance, that is the example. Government levy policy has no effect on our standard of living. Or someone just maybe says like, tax cuts are painful to consumers. Just that. So you state how the economy is, but then it can be true or it can be false. So it needs to be tested. Okay. And then normative economics is another way where a person now tries to prescribe a solution to a problem. So here is different from just stating how things are. All right. Here you try to find solutions. So you go like, the government should do this to do that. Okay. So this does not seek to state the facts or to just state the how things are or the state of affairs, but it goes further into offering solutions. Okay. So you should be able, to read, when you read economic reports, newspapers, whatever discussions, you should be able to understand, is this a prescription or is this stating how things are? So if it says how things are, then you should dig deeper. Is it true or is it false? Okay, can it be tested? So there is where things like, hypothesis testing, but I will not go further into that. It's just to give you an idea of how things are being stated and discussed. So because you have said resources are very important, okay, in the economy, it's because of the problem of scarcity, okay? So you see, a country will not have enough land, will not have enough natural resources. If they discover that a country, if they discover that they have gold reserve, that's a natural resource, most times is that the gold is not like everywhere. So they will start looking at how best to maximize that, to limit maybe an inappropriate mining of that gold, and so forth and so on. So all these things because of scarcity. If gold was everywhere, there would mean nothing like that. right? So if you think about every country which has resources, there's a problem of scarcity. So there now comes the issue of allocation. How do you allocate? Okay, how do you allocate the resources that so that you can maximize? Remember, I talked about scarcity. You need to make choice. Okay, you are forced to make choice that is the most suitable choice because you are limited. Okay, so countries are limited by, when it comes to money, revenues. So they have national budget. So national budget is like a large sum of money that is collected from different sources. That money needs to be spent. So they need to see, where can that money go? Should it go to education? Should it go to agriculture? Should it go to defense, or employment? So it's always a struggle to find the right and perfect measure to allocate those resources accordingly. So this is where now we talk about resource allocation. Okay, that conflict. How this is the whole resource, amount of resource you have. How are you going to distribute between this and that? So you need to know, who are the people who I need? Okay, so usually if it's a country or a society, it's the community, it's the people, right? It's for their best interests. Okay, so this is an example of whereby, and this introduces us to what we call production possibility frontier, PPF curve. Okay, so this is just an assumption. We're using a very small example of just two goods. Okay, two commodities only. Okay, excuse me about that. We're using two commodities to show how many nations are being confronted by the issue of resource allocation. They need to allocate their resources across many needs, many pressing needs, okay, of the society, of the community, of the citizens, civilians, okay? So here's an example whereby a country has to it has a budget, amount of money. They can either buy or invest that money in military goods or defense issues. That means security. Security is very important, okay? You might not feel it because perhaps we live in a country where it's very peaceful, but it takes a huge price for a country to maintain its peace, okay? So for countries that are constantly in conflicts, constantly in war, they spend a lot in security. They spend a lot in military equipment. Okay, so it's like a lot of money. That is like a priority. Okay, firearms and so many things. But you might not really feel it being in Tanzania or in a peaceful place where really you don't really know. So this is now, so it's as much as important. You might say, maybe it's not important. So what I'm trying to say is security issues are super important, okay? Very, very much important, because you don't know when people might have a conflict or might have anything. So how the borders are, how the army is safe, how the issues of security are okay, how is the systems, that everything, all right? So depending on how the country is and where it is, it can look at these two priorities or these two choices. How are we investing this amount of money in either buying more of military goods or buying more of civilian goods? By civilian goods, meaning that food, this is just an example, okay? It could be any other good for civilians, but we are assuming that this is what civilians need directly. We don't have food for the people. So I know when I say food, everyone will say, yes, this relates to us because everybody needs to eat. It's a priority, right? So the same as security. So now this table here gives us, again, this is also in the textbook. So these are different choices of how. So let's say the money, the amount of the budget or the resource, the total amount of resources available. It's okay, let's say it's 1 billion T shillings. It's just an example. Okay, so that's the budget. So that budget these are different choices or options, okay, that can use up all that amount, that 1 billion T shillings to produce these things. Are we together? So you have a budget of 1 billion 1 billion T shillings. And then you have Ministry of Defense. It has needs. They want a budget for they want to buy military goods. And then you have Ministry of Agriculture. They want to buy food. So these are different ways to use up that money, that 1 billion T shillings. Okay. So this choice A, you can either use all the 1 billion T shillings to buy food. So you go like, we are good. We don't need, we are safe. Everything, security is good and all that. So people are hungry. We have famine. It hasn't rained for long. Let's use the whole of 1 billion T shillings in buying wheat. Okay, wheat. So this is the measure of wheat, bushels per year. So 1 million bushels. This is the amount of wheat you're buying, magunia, sacks, or whatever you would put units that makes sense to you. Then B is another option. So the Ministry of Defense would say, no. Let's please have something. We are really in need of some tanks. By the border, it's not very safe. Maybe in Rovuma, in where? So let's have some tanks. Okay. Remember, the source is the same. You have 1 billion T shillings. So instead of using the whole 1 billion T shillings to buy only wheat, you say, okay, let's use some of it to buy 1,000 tanks. And then some of the money we buy 950,000 sacks or bushels of wheat. Okay? So this is how it goes. So it depends, what point are you going to agree on? Should we have some of tanks and some of wheat? Or should we have all tanks and zero wheat? Or all wheat and zero tank? So this is what gives I would say gives birth or produces our PPF curve. Okay, so these are point A, B, C, D are all possible combination. That's why we call it is a curve showing all possible combinations of two goods that can be produced with the resources and technology that is available. Resources is, you have 1 billion T shillings. That is the whole amount of resource. Or maybe you have a land, you only have 1,000 acres of land. You can either plant beans or you can plant coffee for exports. So whatever, or you can do partly. You can say partly we'll produce beans for local supplying, and then half of it or third of it, we produce coffee for export. So that combination, but you're using the same resource, the same amount of resource. Okay, by the same amount of resource, it could be land, it could be money as capital, it could be whatever, but it's the same amount of resource. So all these points here have used all the available resource to produce these goods. Okay, so this is what gives birth to a PPF curve. All right, that's why it's called production. All these are possibilities from combining all the resources and technology available. Okay, so now we want to see what is the opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is when you think for every this choice that you say, okay, here you were producing 0 tanks, okay, 0 tanks and 1,000 bushels of wheat. So you say, let me make a choice to produce more 1,000, okay, 1,000 tanks. So by you making a choice to produce 1,000 tanks, you're going to give up some bushels of wheat. So that is the opportunity cost. Whatever that you're going to give up so that you can produce more of one good. We have talked about this. So this is what it means. Okay? That's why I'm saying we are going to be talking about opportunity cost throughout the course. You just need to know what it means, how is it calculated, how is it working here. Okay, so the next part is the concept of, so remember, I jumped up a slide here. This is a very important page that talks about the key assumptions. Remember, whenever we talk about economic models, all right, whenever we talk about equations, so this is a concept. This PPF is a simple concept that helps you to understand how resource allocation happens in the real world, but using a very smaller and simple example, just two commodities. So this is the same case with all the issues we'll be talking throughout the entire course. Okay, we'll be using simple models. We call them a model. You being in the construction industry, you will understand that when you want to build a house, a residential building, a commercial building, you will need a model, right? An architect will have to kind of create a model. You will have to have a structure, a map of a, you know, something on paper, but it's a representation. It has some scaled measures that represent the whole building. I think you understand. That is a model. So you can have either a diagram on paper, or, you know, a diagram, mchoro, or you can have like a small building that is exactly like that, but it's just smaller, right? To show you how that big building will look like. So the same way with economics, we call them economic models. Sometimes we use equations, okay, that use simple things to explain big things. So what makes that possible? We call what is called assumptions. We introduce assumptions, okay? So you are assuming. It's not real, but you are assuming. So for instance, for you to understand how resource allocation works, how, as I've told you, how, you know, parliamentary discussions about national budget and how resources are being allocated, it could be very difficult for you to understand. But now using this smaller example here, just using two examples, the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Agriculture, has made you understand the whole process. Okay, so this PPF only uses two products, but it's not really in the world like this. In the world, it's a lot of products. It's a lot of conflict. Resources, how do you divide resources, the same resources across 100 demanding things? So you need to understand what are the assumptions for every situation, every model that is given to you. When we go to demand and supply, we will introduce a new model. We'll introduce a new curve, okay? A curve that is completely different from this one. But it will also have its own assumptions. It will also have its own simplicity, okay? But in real world, there are many products. There are many price levels, but we'll only simplify and introduce assumptions. But that whenever you talk about that model, consider these assumptions. When you understand those smaller and simple concepts, then you are able to understand how the real world works. I hope that makes sense. So when you talk about PPF curve, here the underlying assumptions is that we assume that, one, the available resources are used to produce one or both of the only two goods. So we assume that there are only two goods, and you have available resources that you can either take all resources to produce one commodity, or take all resources and kind of divide some to this and some to this, but only to the two commodities. In real world, that's not the case, right? In real world, you have resources, but so many goods to produce. The second assumption is that the total quantities of the resources do not change. So here we assume that, the amount of resource is the same. Okay. That means if you have 2 acres of land, it is 2 acres of land. Okay. You're not going to change that. But in reality, there is something these days, you can increase growth, you can expand. These days, for instance, you can say you can have 2 acres of land, but people can do different things. Like, let's say you build, these days, people do agriculture even on the walls, on air, right? People add fertilizer in the land that can make a lot of production, like increased production. So these days, people can maneuver resources and increase resources. But here we assume the resources do not change. The third, technology and production techniques do not change. So whatever technology is used is the same. If you use amount of labor and capital you mix, that's the same way. So then the fourth is that the resources and technology are fully and efficiently utilized. Here we assume that in that line, okay, any point there, you have used all the resources and technology that is given. You have no excess, you have not underutilized. And so if you have laborers who have degree level or master's level or Form 6 level, you have used them to the maximum. They are fully utilized. But in the world of today, or in the real case scenario, is not the case. Sometimes resources can be underutilized. The machine can have the capacity to produce 1,000 tanks, but maybe it produces only 500 or 800. Or the machine can have the capacity to produce 1,000, but it's forced to produce even more. So, but here the case is that everything is well and fully and efficiently utilized, okay, as per its capacity. All right, so back to our opportunity cost. So opportunity cost here, there is a concept of increasing opportunity cost. So what is increasing opportunity cost? Okay, this is a law whereby we say, okay, this is the case where the more of something we produce, the greater the opportunity cost of producing even more of it. All right. So, okay, so that means when you produce from 0 tanks, you started producing more of tanks. So that means what? 1,000 more. You had to sacrifice. You had to incur an opportunity cost of how many bushels? So for you to know what you are sacrificing, you'll have to take the difference from here to here. That means from point A to B. All right. So let's just do this together. Okay, let's just do this together. So an example from this diagram. So let's say, okay, to have more tanks, that is 1,000 more, 1,000 more. That is a move from A to B will have you sacrifice how many? So you have to take A minus B. That is that's gonna be 50,000. Okay. So you have to sacrifice resources worth of production of 50,000 bushels, right? Okay. And then more tanks. That means you want to produce more tanks, 1,000 more. That will take you from point B, that is from point B to C, okay? So you're just adding the same amount. But then, so here from the first example, example 1, opportunity cost, what you are directly paying out is the 50,000 that you're sacrificing, right? Okay, so here from B to C, for you to produce 1,000 more, that means you are sacrificing, how much you have to take this minus this. 950,000 bushels minus 850, you're getting how much? 100. So that is pretty much, it's a lot of bushels to sacrifice for the same amount. So here, opportunity cost is higher. Before it was just 50,000, but now it's getting higher. Okay, that is example number 2. Let's say the final one, number 3, more tanks. By more tanks, you are moving now from point C to D, right? So from point C to D, that means you are, how much are we sacrificing of bushels? Remember, these are bushels, yeah? You are giving up resources from producing bushels that you can produce more of tanks, okay? So sacrificing now from C to D, 850 minus 700, that is how much? Is 150, right? That is 150 bushels. So that is opportunity cost of that. What you are sacrificing is 150,000 bushels, right? So if you look, is that opportunity cost has been increasing. So from 50,000, every time you're increasing the same amount, just increasing 1,000, but the opportunity cost is higher. Okay, it's like, let me give you an example. It's like one soda is 1,000 shillings, right? One soda, if you want a Pepsi, it's 1,000. So you're thirsty, you want to go, you go and pay out 1,000, right? But let's say whenever you feel thirsty and then you want to add another Pepsi, instead of paying 1,000, you have to pay 2,000. And then when you're thirsty again, you go and buy another soda, you're told you have to pay 3,000. So in other words, when you think about it, is that, wow, I am required to pay more, to sacrifice more for the same unit every time I want more. So it's becoming extremely expensive. Okay, so you're thinking, if the opportunity cost is higher, maybe I should stop buying Pepsi and just maybe keep my money or spend it on something else, because it's becoming difficult. The more I buy more of Pepsi, I am incurring more costs. So this is what the concept of increasing opportunity costs mean. Okay, is whereby you are incurring, or your opportunity cost is increasing the more of the commodity you produce. Okay, so why does it happen in this scenario? The reason is that, as we said, you're using the same resources, you're just moving them to different functions to either produce good A or producing good B. But remember, resources are not, every resource is best at something. That makes sense. If you have 2 acres of land as your resource, maybe that resource or that land can be fertile for beans, okay, but not very good for mining gold, okay? So it's the same acre of land, but it's more suitable for beans cultivation and maybe less suitable for gold. So if you're using the same land to produce some of this and some of this, the more you're shifting, it will be more favorable towards the production, because you're moving all resources, all laborers into one product, and then all laborers into the other. But remember, laborers also have different capabilities, different skills. So where they are good at, they will be good at. But the more you do something, then you might not experience the best out of that, if that makes some sense. Okay, so from that concept is where now we are able to explain why there is increasing opportunity cost. All right, so that marks you know, as far as opportunity cost and PPF is concerned from this discussion here. Okay, I hope that is very clear. You can get into the textbook as well and just understand it a bit more. So let's wind up on the opportunity cost. So points. So you will have a point here. Any point that is inside here. Okay, inside here. That means you are underutilizing. This is where you have used all the resources. Any point here you are using well your resources efficiently. Okay, if it's 2 acres of land, you're using all of it. But if you have 2 acres of land, but you're only using 1.5 acre of land for either production of wheat or tanks, and a half excuse me, and a half an acre is left, that means you're underutilizing. So that will be any point here. Okay, so we call this a point of productive inefficient. Okay, so there are a number of reasons for this. You can also read on the text as well. I won't go so much into detail, but just think of any reason why would you know, resources being underutilized, what could cause it. All right, then when the point is outside here, okay, any point outside the curve, okay, so this is where we call it unattainable. We call it unattainable. All right, that means it's like it's out of reach. You have used up all your resources, you have nothing left. Okay, so that's what it means. All right, okay, how far are we doing so far? I hope all is well. You are keeping up with me. So we have completed about an hour already, or almost. So we're almost done. So let's get now to the other part where we talk about economic systems. Okay, so economic systems, this basically it's how about, you know, understanding how different nations, different economies work together in terms as far as allocation of resources is concerned. Okay, so okay, and how now they get to organize themselves. All right, so there are important terminologies that you need to understand. Okay, so one is called specialization and the other one is called exchange. Okay, so what does this mean is that economies come together first from the individual perspective. You as a person, you don't have everything. Okay, you cannot depend on yourself only. All right, so you don't have everything that you need. So usually you'll find that you're not self-sufficient. You will need somebody else. So let's say you want varieties. You want, even if you have a farm where you have vegetables, you have rice, you have that, you might not have cooking oil. So you will need someone who has a farm, and then, you know, you need money, or you need to exchange. So maybe you need to exchange your rice for that cooking oil. So you can't say, I have money, I am self-sufficient. You cannot eat your money. That's what I mean. Okay, and even if you had material things, you cannot, like, let's say have everything that requires, like, to produce clothes, to produce food, to construct your house and all that. You will need people to build your house. You will need people to do. So what I'm trying to say is that no matter how much of everything you might think you have, you really don't have everything. You're not self-sufficient. You need other people. But of course, you will need some resources to help you to exchange to get what you want. So that is where now the term interdependency come in, okay, where you need to reach out and say, I have this, I have money, I have time, I have skills, I have this, can I bring in, can I give you? And in exchange, you give me something to eat, you give me a salary, you give me that so that I can meet my other needs, okay? So for that to happen, we have two terms. One is specialization. So specialization is a method of production in which each person concentrates on a limited number of activities, okay? So for that interdependence to happen, whatever you're bringing to the table, whatever you're bringing to, you have to have some set of things that you can focus on and say, okay, I can do this. I have these skills. So skills is something that you have concentrated, you have accumulated over time. Education, okay? If you have a farm, that means you have skills for farming, you have an acre of land, whatever. So specialization is that. And then exchange is where now you come and trade with each other to get now what you do not have and give what you have, okay? So that aspect where I've explained to you from an individual perspective, it has to transcend all the way to how even groups, firms, nations, okay? So even countries, when you see China exporting certain products and then in exchange they import certain products, it all sources from here. That as an economy, as a country, is not self-sufficient. So it has some strengths, it has some needs. So where does it come and meet with other people and exchange? Where does it specialize? Okay, so these are kind of the considerations, gains from special. It's good when people come together and specialize and then exchange. They interact in that aspect. So these are the gains that they can get. So you can just read them. I won't really go through them, but they're the benefits of doing that. That means it gives you time to focus on what you're good at. You save time, okay? But also it gives you, because you're focusing on something, it gives you an edge, it gives you an advantage over that thing. So when you get to the market, it's easier for you to be known for that thing and trade for that thing in exchange for something else. When you think about used cars, I think Japan comes first, right? So for us, it's like the world has left Japan to produce cars that are, they're cheaper and they're easy, I think, to produce, and they have specialized in that over time. They have become the best, the efficient country in cars. So cars that are affordable, you know what I mean? Okay, I'm not talking about like super expensive brands like German or something. I'm just talking about that. When you think about that, then let's say Africa is known for, let's say, agricultural products. So it's focused on that. You'll find that a lot of African land is used for farming, okay? And a lot of food has been exported, or crops and things like that. So everything, because of that, countries are focused on that, and that really makes everyone shine in their area. That's what, in a nutshell, that's supposed to mean. So this should be the final part where we talk about now these very two important concepts that now, from specializing, exchange, these are the kind of gains that we talk about, okay? So they can be either absolute advantage gain or a comparative advantage, okay? These are advantages that come up when two individuals or two countries trade with each other or exchange with each other, okay? So what is absolute advantage? This is the ability to produce a good or service using fewer resources than other producers use, okay? So that means you produce faster or quicker, or you produce more than the other person. In short, that's what it means, okay? Are we together? So if you're producing, let's say, sacks of maize in maybe 6 months' time, you all have the same acres of land. You have 3 acres, you and your friend, or you and your neighbor, you have 2 farms, you have 1 farm each, 3 acres, 3 acres. and then you're given 6 months to produce maize. So if at the end of 6 months from the 3 acres, one person, okay, maybe it's you produce more sacks, let's say 100 sacks, and your neighbor produces 60 sacks, then we say you have, because you have produced more than the other, you have an absolute advantage. Okay, that's a simple way that I can say. Or you could use less time, okay, to produce more. So let's say you all produce the same. You produce the same amount of sacks, 50 sacks, 50 sacks, but your neighbor produces 50 sacks in 6 months, but you produce 50 sacks in 3 months. You have used your technology, faster, whatever that has made you faster to produce 50 sacks. So you have done it in a shorter time, okay? So you have absolute advantage. That's another very simple explanation. Now, when it comes to comparative advantage, this is whereby one has the ability to produce a good or a service at a lower opportunity cost than the other producer. So here, in other words, is that the only measure that we're using is the opportunity cost. So you have your farm, you have to produce maize. When we come at the end of the day, is that who has the lower opportunity cost? That's the winner. That's who we should go for. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, so I think that's the simple definition. So I think the question is, how does it practically work? Okay, how do you choose? What is better than, is it absolute advantage or comparative advantage? Okay, so it's easier with absolute advantage to kind of calculate, but then it can be a not appropriate basis for trade or for exchange. Okay, if you completely focus on that or rely on it as your basis for bringing people together to exchange, that can be, and we'll see why. Okay, so we're going to do this together, this task. I think this is going to be our last one. Okay, these other parts are very simple, just notes that you can read on your own. This is the most important part of this part here of this absolute and comparative advantage. So this example is also in the textbook. So please, if in case you need more clarification, understanding, but I will try my best to just make it as clear as possible. Okay, so I want us to calculate it together from here. Okay, now that you know the definitions, yeah, let's just get started. So so there are two people. Okay, so this from the textbook, I'll just borrow from that. I don't have to invent my own other example. But think about, there was a plane crash. Okay, the plane crash happened by the island, all right, in the ocean, by the island, unfortunately. And then there are two survivors. Okay, so two survivors at the end of each, the island, how the island can be, right? So at the end of, like, maybe there's a little bush in the middle, and then the edges of the island. So at one end of the island, Mary falls, and at the other end, George falls. So these are the only survivors. They're alive, okay? But it's an isolated island where nobody lives there, okay? So now, okay, at this point, they have to survive. They have to live until they find rescue, but they don't know if they're survivors. Like, Mary thinks she's on her own, she's the only survivor, and George thinks he's the only survivor. So they're trying to make their living, okay? And one of the main things for living is food, okay? So fortunate enough, they find that there are two sources of food from that a little small island, a small forest. There are some trees there. So they find that there are some trees, some berry trees, okay? Berries are fruits, okay? So berries, and then fish, they can fish from the ocean, right? So they can catch some fish if they're lucky enough and make some food, all right? So now this table shows the labor requirement, the amount of hours and what they can get as they try to fend for themselves to survive, okay? So Mary, given her strength, her capacity and everything, she can use 1 hour, okay, to catch one fish, all right? She's pretty good. This is pretty good. If she can use 1 hour, probably she has some fishing knowledge, experience, I suppose, okay? She can spend 1 hour and get one fish, catch one fish and roast that fish and eat. And then Mary also, okay, has the capacity, is able to also collect 1 cup of berries, okay, within 1 hour, okay? That's very good. Now, how about George on the other end? George doesn't really have much advantage on catching fish. He struggles here. So he uses 3 hours to catch just one fish, okay? And then when it comes to berries, he uses 1.5 hours to just collect 1 cup of berries. So we're saying 1 cup, but it's not like they have a cup. So let's say like a cup could be maybe for them to fill a hand like this. Yeah, a handful, something like that, just because they don't really have a cup. So we're just using this for measuring, to have a unit of measuring, okay? So that we can stick to our imagination, right? Okay. So now, as you can see, everyone struggles their own way, okay? So one spends 1 hour, and the other one. So now it just happened like 2 days later, 3 days later of surviving on their own, they happen to meet. Wow, that is such a good experience, all right? So now they realize, wow, we have met, like they're so much encouraged and things like that. So now their work, they're like, now we don't have to struggle, okay? We can work together, all right? And contribute something, but get something more out of our activities, okay? So they want to specialize, they want to exchange, they want to share from what they can do to catch fish and berries that they can both enjoy and each one can contribute. So how are they going to do that? In other words, how are they going to do that? Okay, so Mary tells George, when I was alone 3 days ago, I could take 1 hour to catch a fish. And then I struggled to get a cup of berries. I would have to spend an hour. Can you imagine? And George is like, my friend, is that a struggle? You should have seen me. I would spend at least 3 hours just to catch a fish, and that fish would not even be that big. And now berries is 1.5 hours. So I don't know. You are much better than me. And Mary's like, no. I think we can come to something. We can do something together. So how do we do this? Okay. So here are the gains taken. So, George is like, okay, let's see. Let's use absolute advantage. Okay. Let's use this approach. Okay. So we want to maximize our gains together because we're going to work together. We're going to maximize our gains. So George is like, let's use the absolute advantage approach. Let's see if that can give us can allow us to specialize and exchange and maximize our gains. Mary's like, how does that work? How does absolute advantage works? So what is absolute advantage again? Our definition is the ability to produce a good or service using fewer resources than other producers use. Okay, so let's look at them. So it's comparing one to the other. Who does it more, or who has it more than the other, who uses less time? So if we look at it, absolute advantage, Mary, when it comes to producing one fish, Mary uses 1 hour. George uses 3 hours, right? Okay, so it's very simple. Let's do this. Okay, so absolute advantage. Okay, so please follow through and understand. Okay, I don't know what just happened here because I am trying to. Wow. Okay. Ah, interesting. Okay, I'm not sure how we can let's see. Okay. So let's find absolute advantage here. It's very simple. We're not going to spend much time because it's very easy. So from the definition is who uses lesser resources, fewer resources than the other. So to produce one fish, okay, we see that Mary uses 1 hour, okay, while George uses 3 hours. So who uses fewer resources to produce one fish? So obviously, Mary has absolute advantage in producing or catching fish. Okay? That is said and done. So let's see on the other commodity. The other commodity is 1 cup of berries. 1 cup of berries. How does that work? So 1 cup of berries, to produce it, Mary uses 1 hour. Okay? While George uses 1.5 hours. So who has absolute advantage? So absolute advantage is the one who uses fewer resources. So again, here, Mary, since uses 1 hour, has absolute advantage in producing, or rather collecting berries. Okay, so is there basis or gains for exchange? There is no even possibility, like there is no even ground for them to trade, because definitely Mary has absolute advantage in both commodities. In other words, here, Mary should produce everything, should do the fishing and so is George gonna rest all day doing nothing because George has no absolute advantage? That means this does not really provide a good basis for them to come together and exchange and specialize. So we can't use the approach, okay? So we fail at this point to use absolute advantage approach, okay? So we say this cannot be done. by absolute advantage. I mean, yeah, because only one person has absolute advantage in everything. Okay, so now we try the comparative advantage. And so Mary is asking, okay, what is this comparative advantage? Comparative advantage is where one person has lower opportunity cost in producing that commodity. Then Mary asks, how is that even happening? How can we do that? How do we calculate the opportunity cost? Okay. And George says it's very simple. Let me show you. So let's do this again together. Okay. So we are going to have here comparative advantage approach. We are going to leave our table as it is, but I will need to, okay, let's do this. Um, let's do this. Just a moment there, bear with me. Okay. Okay, so we are going to have, I am trying to have everything in one slide so that we don't have to move back and forth to refer to information. Okay. So might have to, okay, but it's gonna be fine. So that's it. Okay. So how do we do this? Okay. We have to find who has the lowest opportunity cost in producing the commodity. So just as how we started with producing one fish, you wanted to know from one fish how much, whatever. So now here we're also going to start, okay, with one fish, okay. So here, because it's about opportunity cost, remember, you have to, it's an additional. So you want to know to catch more fish, okay, to catch one more fish, what happens? To catch more fish, what happens? So let's start with Mary. If Mary wants to catch one more fish, that means you will have to spend, for Mary to catch one more fish, he will have to spend 1 more hour, right? 1 more hour to fish, to fishing, right? So by Mary spending more hour to fishing, that means Mary is sacrificing 1 hour, okay? So that means is by doing that, Mary is also spending 1 less hour because of fishing, okay? So spending 1 less hour, meaning that 1 hour, she could be collecting, okay? She could be collecting berries, okay? She could be collecting berries. So that means she's less berries, okay? Less berries worth of 1 hour. She's losing because she's spending more, she's giving more of more of an hour to get one fish. So when you talk about opportunity cost, remember, it's about if you by spending 1 more hour, that means you could be spending that 1 hour in another thing. which is collecting berries. So that, because she's not collecting berries, she is losing berries worth of 1 hour. So if we come to our table here, 1 hour in berries equals to 1 cup of berries. So that means 1 less cup of berries, right? So she's running short of 1 cup of berries. Okay, I hope that is very clear. Okay. So let's go to George now for the same fish. How about George? So George, to catch 1 more fish, let's see if the scenario for George. For George to catch 1 more fish, that means okay, so let's first finish, just pardon me. Let's finish with Mary. So Mary here, opportunity cost of 1 more fish is what? Is 1 cup of berry, right? I think that's very clear. This is our small conclusion here for Mary, right? Mary's opportunity cost of 1 more fish, of catching 1 more fish, of catching 1 more fish is 1 cup of berries, because she needs 1 hour to catch 1 more fish. That 1 hour, she's losing it. Instead, she would have gone collecting berries. So if she could go get berries for 1 hour, she could get 1 cup. So by choosing to spend 1 hour in fishing, she's sacrificing, she's foregoing, or she's incurring an opportunity cost of 1 berry. Okay, so this is very important to keep to note. So let's go to George's story now. So George, if George decides to use the time, needs to catch just 1 more fish, that means he will need to spend 3 hours, right? 3 hours to fishing. Okay, so for George to spend 3 hours fishing, what does that mean? So obviously it is to spend less time, right? Is sacrificing, is spending 3 hours less, okay, where he could be using that time to collect berries, right? Worth of 3 hours. So what is berries worthy of 3 hours? That is, if we see here, to get 1 cup of berry is 1.5 hours. So 3 hours would be 2 cup of berry. So he is sacrificing 2 cups of berries just to catch 1 more fish. Okay. So our small conclusion here, okay, our small conclusion here is that George's opportunity cost of catching 1 more fish is 2 cups of berries. Okay, so who has the lowest opportunity cost in fishing? Okay, in catching one more fish? Who has the lowest opportunity cost in catching one more fish? So clearly, Mary's opportunity cost is 1 cup of berries, and George's opportunity cost of catching one more fish is 2 cups of berries. So obviously here, the one with the lowest opportunity cost is Mary. So here we see that Mary has the lowest opportunity cost. Okay, in fishing, right? Opportunity costing. Let me just say in fishing. So again, we see that Mary is rocking here. She also has a when it comes to fishing. So let's see if that's gonna be the same when it comes to berries. Okay, so how would it be for berries? So berries, we go by cups. So we want to see to collect 1 more cup of berries. How is the story going to be here? Okay, how is the story going to be like? So we start with Mary, right? So for Mary, to catch 1 more cup of berries, Mary would need to spend how much? 1 cup of berry to spend 1 more hour, okay, collecting berries. Okay, by doing this, she is sacrificing, okay, she is sacrificing, she's spending 1 less hour that she could use. She could, where she could be fishing, okay? She could be catching fish. That means she's less fish worth of her 1 hour that she's using to collect berries. That means that is 1 hour is equivalent to 1 fish. So 1 less fish. Okay. So how do we conclude is that our small conclusion here is going to be that Mary's choice to pick berries, collecting 1 cup, one more cup of berries is her sacrificing, right? 1 fish. Okay. Then we go to George's case. So George's case here, George's case is that he wants to catch 1 more cup of berries as well, right? 1 cup of berries. That means he will have to spend, how much time does he need? 1.5 hour picking. Okay, you'll have to spend 1 hour picking berries. Cool. So what does that mean? That means by doing that, he is spending less. by giving that 1.5 hour to collecting berries, he's sacrificing less 1.5 hour, which he could be, he could be using that time to catching fish, right? So that means he's missing out on fish that is worth of 1.5 hour. So 1.5 hour equals to how many fish? So here for George, he spends 3 hours to get one fish. So if he has 1 hour and a half, so we say a half fish. Okay, it's not possible, but you can't say he goes and cut a fish into a half because that's not the case, but just for the simplicity, yeah? Okay, so a half fish. Okay, you could get let's say maybe a smaller fish, but it's a half fish, okay? Worth of that. Okay, so in conclusion, we say that George's opportunity cost of collecting or picking one more cup of berries is a half fish. Okay, so who has the lowest opportunity cost in picking berries, in picking or collecting berries? By picking, okay, opportunity cost in picking, you can say one more cup of berries. Okay, so we just simply go and compare the two. Mary's opportunity cost is one fish, whereas George's opportunity cost is half a fish. So who has the lowest? Definitely it is George. George has a half. So George, excuse me, what happened there? Okay, so George has the lowest opportunity cost in picking berries. Okay, so we see that using comparative advantage, now we see that Mary can now specialize in fishing because she has a lower opportunity cost in fishing. And then George can specialize in picking berry. Okay, so each one spends their day. Mary will spend the whole day using most hours fishing because she has the lowest opportunity cost, and then George now also gets to contribute because he has a proven lowest opportunity cost in picking berries. So he will spend the day picking berries, and then they will come together and exchange or share so that they can have each, right? So I hope this helps you to understand. So whether it's Mary and George, or whether it's China and Turkey, or Tanzania and Kenya, trading in any of the commodities, be it cars and maize, this is the kind of approach you kind of consider when you are looking at absolute advantage and comparative advantage. I hope that is very clear. And so this sums up our lecture. This resource allocation, just these are the questions that guide you into the process. You can just read them through, not very hard. So every kind of resource allocation approach, it considers these questions, okay? And then the methods is now how are they allocated. So different economies uses different kinds. So these are traditional economy, command economy. So, everything is centered. And then we have the market economy, where you leave it up to, the forces of demand and supply, and prices decide. So each kind of a system, it has its own challenges. So I want you to go through the text, read them carefully, and discuss their setbacks. What are the setbacks for each? Okay, so this sums up our first topic. I hope it's a good introduction into the whole topic. So the next topic is on demand and supply. So that will follow after. Just make sure that you revise this carefully, you read the text and try to answer the questions at the end, as well as review what are these group tasks, assignments will be shared with you, which consists of different questions after every few chapters. So please make sure to cooperate and participate and contribute as well, because that will also be part of your grading for the semester, for the course. So all the best. Let me end here.